Do you guys consider this game open world?
I think open world is a strange question, because ultimately we will have different regions. There is a world map. You'll be going from like eastern Ferelden to western Orlais, so I mean that's a big swath of land. Obviously we're not going to build 1 million square miles of space, so that I think means that we're not truly open world in the way that some people think, but I think each of the areas we're building is certainly larger than anything we've ever built before.
The game we're developing, you know, where there's bigger spaces, has basically been the design from day one. Fundamentally, the experience I want players to have is that the campaign, right, the core storyline, presents you with a series of challenges. And those challenges are fulfilled via exploring, right, by going out and going into the world and kind of earning power and influence for your Inquisition.
It's probably the majority of the gameplay is the player exploring Thedas and trying to build up enough power that he can unlock these crit path moments. We obviously look at the feedback from previous games very carefully, and the biggest thing that I'm trying to do is reintroduce exploration, that sense of wonder to the player when he's finding something new, which might have been more limited by our engines in the past. So now we have much larger spaces we can explore and much more surprises the player can stumble upon.
It certainly required us to be very cogent about keeping a focus on story, keeping, you know, strong themes, strong purposes, so you don't feel like an aimless wanderer. But there is an absolute elemental and primal joy in cresting a hill and seeing something that you had no idea was over there. And that is where, you know, a more open design shines, is it lets you find and hide things away and have these cool little visual stories and so on that we have to accept. The player may never see and be totally okay with that, which we are.
And one of the things I do is try to analyze some playtest data for that, so we can see how the players are experiencing it right now. So this is 20 or 30 sessions. We can see where, in general, people are staying on this main path. We want to try and figure out how we can get them to explore a little bit more. You can take a look at combats and see, oh, there's problems. People are always dying at this spot. So we can look at exactly why that's happening. If maybe that combat's too tough, and then we can look at exactly what they're interacting with at various spots in the level. Once we're happy with the space, that's when we can come in and start iterating on the thematic elements that we're doing there. So adding more of the encounters with the Venatori, adding the elements that the player is trying to build his Inquisition's power, so camps he can capture, or lost collections that he can find. The exploration areas are meant to be explored more than once. They're not, I go to that thing and I'm finished. The player can come back to these. There will be higher level content within areas they can come back to later on.
I would say that we're in a lot of ways, we're actually a lot like what you saw in the Baldur's Gate series, with areas that existed in part just to be spaces that you went through, but they had a story of their own, and bringing that back, getting back to something from our roots is really good.
In terms of why not pure open world, it's a term that carries a ton of baggage. You know, it immediately makes you think of a very specific kind of game, or 2 or 3 very different types of game. And they're all very good, but they don't necessarily play to the same strengths that we've played with in BioWare games in the past. And so for me, not falling into the trap of jumping on a bandwagon and wanting to have a game that people can understand that story is still first. I think a truly open world invites you to take it in almost any order, and that has a strength of its own, but it's a strength that comes with sacrifices, just like having a tightly scripted, highly contained story does. None of them are right. None of them are right. That's the thing. It's all about how you want to execute. And to my mind, the team that we have and the desire that they have is to execute on one that has that kind of story that takes you to new places, as opposed to being a campaign that says, no, go anywhere anytime you want.
Do you think it's a challenge you'd like to tackle sometime in the future, though?
I don't know. I don't necessarily know that it would be the right challenge to tackle with Dragon Age. I think that, you know, when you make a series of games, you need to find what works for that series of games. You need to cultivate fans that have stuck with you and are really passionate and that want to do it. And you need to be consistent within. Is it something BioWare might look into? Maybe. I mean, it's, you know, that's a pretty long-term question. Those games can be absolutely enthralling, right? You can lose yourself for 70, 80, 170 hours in an Elder Scrolls game, and that's fabulous. But we also have, you know, kind of an expectation, I think, for Dragon Age, which is that strong story, which is a focus on those tough, kind of gut-wrenching choices, the Arl Eamon, you know, what will you do with his son kind of decision, and that having a tighter emphasis on story helps us to maintain that. So, you know, it's never off the books, but I think for Dragon Age, I'd like to stay true to what makes Dragon Age, right? Having that party, working together, and having that story progress.